Hi everyone, well done for submitting your fantastic outcomes last week. There was some really quality products produced, so really well done and keep up that good work. Today we're going to make Rocky Road. Okay, the first step we're going to start with is lining a baking tin. Now although we're not going to put it in the oven, we need to set our Rocky Road in our baking tin, and I'll show you that now. So I am starting with a baking tin. You can use whatever sort of size that you like. I'm using sort of 18 or 20 by 20. Okay, I'm going to get it lined with some greaseproof paper, baking parchment. Okay, and I'm going to use some margarine or butter. Today I'm using a bit of butter to act as an adhesive to hold down that greaseproof paper. So my first thing I'm going to do is just across my baking tin, I'm going to just spread little bits of my butter. Okay, and all that's going to do is going to act as a bit of a an adhesive, like I've mentioned. It's just going to help hold down that greaseproof paper when we pour in our mixture later. So you can see I've cut a square that's a little bit bigger than the tin, and all I'm going to do is in each corner just going to cut down, being really careful with those scissors, just diagonally in, and all that allows me to do is tuck it in nice and tidy in the corners. So you need to test it so you can see that I can push it in, and because I have cut those corners, it just allows me to neaten up those edges. This section here needs a little bit more. And as does that one. And they just overlap each other, and now I have got my greaseproof paper lined in my baking tin. Okay, so now I've got my baking tin lined, I have weighed out my marshmallows and my sultanas, so it's 100 grams of each. Now this is the stage where you might customise your dish. Okay, you might customise your Rocky Road by changing some of these ingredients, substituting them. So you might take out the sultanas and put another dried fruit in there, or you might do 50-50, so some cherries, some sultanas. Okay, you might reduce the amount of marshmallow in there and swap it for something like Maltesers or bits of broken up crunchy. Okay, with regard to the chocolate, I'm using milk chocolate today. However, again, you could substitute all of that chocolate or parts of that chocolate for either dark chocolate, so you could have 50-50, okay, or you could have some white chocolate in there, or you could even out the quantities into dark chocolate, milk chocolate and white chocolate. That's entirely up to you. What you do need to bear in mind with this recipe is there's a lot of sugar in there, so we need to make sure that we portion it appropriately. Okay, so they're sort of bite-sized pieces. Okay, so in my mixing bowl are my marshmallows and my sultanas. I'll just show you over here. So you can see I've got my marshmallows and my sultanas in my bowl here. They can be in the same bowl because we're just going to add it to the melted chocolate in a little while. Okay. So you've got two options when breaking down your digestive biscuits. I guess you could use rich tea biscuits, or you could use something like ginger nut if you want to add a different sort of element to it. You could put your biscuits into your bowl, use the end of a clean rolling pin and crush them, or you could put them into a sandwich bag, okay, and just be really careful with that sandwich bag, just in case you don't have a bowl big enough, okay, and again we're just going to break it down. You don't want to be hitting it too hard, because the issue with that is that bag's going to burst, isn't it? Watch your fingers, okay? And what we're aiming for is as small as we can, really. But there might be some larger pieces in there, that's fine, okay? But primarily we want most of it to be a crumb, okay? So again, you can see there's still... So you can see I've got a good mixture of fine crumbs and some slightly larger ones, which will give a little bit more texture, in our rocky road, okay? So now I've crushed my biscuits, I've got my sultanas and my marshmallows in the bowl ready to go. I'm going to melt my butter and my chocolate. Okay, so I'm using butter, but you could use margarine, and I'm using milk chocolate, but once again, we've already talked briefly about substituting or swapping the types of chocolate, so I'm using milk. You might want to use some dark in there, you might want to use some white chocolate in there, but it has to be the same quantity, doesn't it? Because that chocolate is going to bind together all of our other ingredients. Okay, now my golden question is about different techniques to melt the chocolate. So the way I'm going to do it today is on a really low heat in a saucepan, okay? And I'm going to melt the butter first, and then I'm going to put piece by piece of chocolate in there, okay, on a really low heat. I don't want to see any bubbles when I'm melting it, because what happens if you melt it too quick on a high temperature is it goes past that melted stage and starts becoming grainy, okay, has a bitter taste, and it doesn't combine our ingredients like we need it to, okay? So I'm going to cut down my chunks of butter and make sure it's on 0. And again, if we have it as small pieces, it'll melt a little bit quicker, won't it? So this is a 250 gram stick of butter. So I'll need 150 of this. Just there. Okay, so my butter is in the pan. I've broken down my chunks of chocolate already. I'm just going to wash my hands, and then I am going to start melting that butter. So you can see I've got my butter in my pan. It's on a really low heat, just so I don't burn it. So that just means it's going to be quite gradual. I have broken down my chocolate into the segments, okay? That will again help it melt much quicker. So I'm going to allow that to melt nice and gently, nice and gradually, just moving it around. So I don't want to be stirring this this butter vigorously, because it's just going to turn into a thick sludge, and I don't want that. I want it to be a nice yellow liquid, okay? You can see that I've melted the butter now, so it has turned into my liquid that I wanted rather than a thick sludge. I just melted it on a really low heat. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to add my bits of chocolate. And it's really important that we break it down nice and small to ensure that it melts much quicker. Please be careful when you put in the chocolate in, because it is really hot liquid butter. Just stirring those in. So you can see I've got my last bits of chocolate in there, just breaking them down. There's a couple that I could have sort of broken up a little bit more. And I just want it to be a nice smooth liquid chocolate, okay? And it's as simple as that. The main skill today is melting, and we're not going to oven bake this, okay? It's a set sort of product, so it's going to go into the fridge, and the chocolate is going to solidify with the other ingredients. Which will create a nice rocky road. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to add my dry ingredients into these wet ingredients. Okay, so I'm going to add my sultanas and my marshmallows. I'm going to give it a good stir. You can see I've added my marshmallows and sultanas in there. So I've added my sultanas and my marshmallows in there. I'm just going to add my biscuits. Just be really careful, don't get crumbs everywhere. We've only got a certain amount of time to sort of get it all combined before that chocolate and butter start to cool down. And all I'm going to do is combine my mixture. And if the chocolate was still quite warm when you added those marshmallows, they'll start melting, okay? So you can see now, all I've done is I've added my mixture and I've given it a good stir. So all I need to do now is pour my ingredients, my mixture, into my baking tin. And it's really important that you get it right into those corners and compress it down. Now I could probably get away with doing another tin here, or a slightly larger tin than what I've got, because you can see just as I press these down, I could put another layer on top of there, but we're getting quite close to the top of our baking tin, and also it'll be quite a thick product. You can see that it spreads quite nice and easily, and you've got to think about, if it's really dry and crumbly at this stage, what you need to do is maybe add some more melted chocolate, okay? It might be a case of you've overcooked that chocolate and it's gone quite granular rather than a liquid, okay? And it's not combining it together, okay? So you can see I've got enough for maybe another tin there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another smaller tin and put them into the fridge. So you can see that my two Rocky Roads are ready to go into the fridge, and it asks for 2 hours. If it's a little bit larger or thicker, it might need longer, and again, if it's a little bit smaller, you might be able to get away with it in a shorter time period. Okay, but essentially what we're looking for is that butter and that chocolate to really solidify, to combine those ingredients together so it's a nice biscuit. Okay, now before I put them in the fridge, I've actually just set them aside, let them cool down on my kitchen side for a few moments, okay, just to ensure that that chocolate and that butter is cool, okay, because I don't want to put a hot dish into the fridge, because what that does is it starts increasing the temperature of your fridge, okay, and it could start spoiling some of your produce in your fridge. So if you take, for example, you've got some meat in there, if you then warm up that temperature of the fridge because you've put in a hot dish, you might take it from below the right temperature to above the right temperature, and it might be over a short time period, and it might be what's known as a danger zone, whereby bacteria can now start multiplying at a quicker rate. Okay,